Do you think that implementation of 5G on city properties places them at some liability risk in the event of lawsuits that will arise about health impacts of 5G? Anyone want to answer that?
I would say the Environmental Health Trust has all the statements by industry. So for example, Crown Castle, who is the company that's putting up small cells in our neighborhoods where I live in Maryland, and they state to their shareholders, warning them that if regulations change or there could be lawsuits and there could be changes and it could be shown that this radiation is harmful, but they're not warning the people whose homes they're putting the small cells in front of. And when I raised this to the county, to the lawyers, in a room with the lawyers, with the officials, and I said, I want to know about the liability issues, not just from the health standpoint, but that we, the taxpayers, will incur. And they actually stopped. They said they cannot answer that question, and they would not answer that question right then. And I have yet to get an answer to that question, but I think it's super important.
Well, the question, there's something called the 10K form. If some of you how many of you have heard of a 10K form? Right, it has to be filed every year by every major company that has stockholders. And what it is it indicates the liabilities that they face. And what she's referring to, and there's a whole section of this on our website, is that as a routine matter, reporting on liability, that means things that could create problems for the company, they are reporting
Could be
this
risks,
issue.
financial risks. Yeah.
What is the situation with getting insurance for wireless technology now in terms of the secondary insurance industry, Lloyd's of London, Swiss Re, and the like? Anyone know?
Yeah, I can take that, Devra.
Sure.
So they know there's a huge risk. The insurance companies years ago identified that radio frequency and electromagnetic radiation are a huge risk, and they have actually begun writing exclusions into their policies where they will not cover for radio frequency. And so what the industry typically does is passes that risk on to those that they're signing contracts with, which could be our towns, which could be our schools.
Go ahead. I don't want to stop you. I thought you were done. And I would add, on the environmental health website, we actually have the white papers of the industry where they classify electromagnetic fields as high risk, and then we have links to these clauses that you're speaking of. They exclude electromagnetic radiation, health damages from the radiation, sort of as an industry standard. And if you want coverage, you need to buy a pollution policy. It's defined as part of a pollution as well. So that is all on our website. I hope you make use of it, actually.
All right. I don't know if we have any attorneys on this panel right now. All right,
He can
plead
answer
guilty.
that.
So the question is, can governments avoid liability if they allow the FCC limits in the event that these limits are later found to be much too high in the future? Can they argue they're in compliance with the law and therefore they're not vulnerable?
Well, somebody can prove an injury. They're going to go after the manufacturer of the product, which has already been done. They're going to go after the person who installed the device and the person who is using the device to power the system. Those people are immediately, once they get sued, they're going to look around for co-defendants that they can share that risk with. Cities are one possibility. My clients are generally cities, and our position will be, A, we have a comprehensive indemnification agreement in any agreement we do with the cell folks, saying this is your problem. We are mandated by preemption by the FCC and by now state law in Michigan to allow these things within a very short period of time, and we can go on about that. But that is the first line of defense for the cities, is that we warned you, and now you want to bring this lawsuit on us, which essentially falls on all of you as taxpayers and users of the system. And so there will be a strong argument opposing any kind of liability like that. But is there potential for it? Sure.
I've asked Mr. Bathgate to join us because he has to leave for another engagement. And I want to ask you, are you aware of the relationship between 5G and DARPA? The DARPA is the Defense Agency Research.
Okay. I hold a top secret government clearance, so I can't really say a lot. about what this is, but DARPA has been examining beyond 90 megahertz as a weapons device.
Beyond 90 gigahertz or
About 90 gigahertz, I apologize.
gigahertz, right, okay.
As a weapons device in space.
In space?
Yes.
In space, okay. So, and we now have the new Space Force that has just been created as well. So we have the opportunity to have the militarization of space using these
And
weapons.
that's all I can say about it.
Uh-huh,
Sorry.
thank you. Okay. Are there any lawsuits against the recent FCC rulings steamrollering 5G implementation, usurping local control?
Well, and this is really part of the solution to all of the issues you've heard about this afternoon. There are multiple efforts underway to appeal the FCC rulings that came out about 2 months ago, which mimic the state laws, which here in Michigan last week, the House passed SB 637, which essentially strips local government of the ability to regulate these devices in large measure, and of course gives away the right-of-way that you all support as taxpayers for free, almost for free, to the industry. So the appeals of those FCC orders are underway right now. One of the things you can do is when you go to City Hall, encourage them to join these consortiums. Lawyers, we need money to do what we do, and these consortiums are formed, they're national. The one that we've brought the Michigan folks into has communities like Boston and LA and Dallas, et
Tell us
cetera.
about your organization.
Pardon?
You have an organization. What is it?
Well, sometimes we're organized, but so I represent a group of cities. We're about 100 strong right now around the state of Michigan, called PROTEC, and PROTEC watches what goes on in the right-of-way and tries to protect the right-of-way from encroachments by telecom, pipelines, electric, and so on. Everybody wants to be in the right-of-way. They all think that they should be there immediately, and they all think they should do it for free, and telecom's no different. So with regard to the FCC, which preempts the state, which preempts the city in terms of the order of things, we are already appealing the FCC orders. We need help. We need cities to join us. We need you to bring resources. And then PROTEC or some organization of Michigan cities will likely file a challenge to the SB 637, which attempts to do the same thing. And is it duplicative? Absolutely. Not my fault. I didn't do this, but when the industry, especially telecoms and led by AT&T, when they do something that's going to enhance their bottom line, it is not uncommon for them to do exactly what they've done here. Congress, the FCC, the FTC, state legislature, all the administrative people you can imagine, and they don't do it bashfully. So
I'll
if
put
we're
you
go-
on the spot. What's the probability that this governor is going to veto this bill? And what would it take to make that happen? What if everybody in this room called their 10 best friends and said, you got to get into the governor, and you got a phone call and send letters and emails? What would happen?
Well, since that issue is still pregnant, I will say that I love the governor. He's a brilliant guy, and I am sure he will see that this bill should be vetoed. That's my official position, because I wouldn't want to, shoot my own argument in the foot. So
All right.
we're hopeful. We're always hopeful.
What can people do to protect themselves against a small cell unit is placed in front of their house or against smart meters? What practical things can they do?
Short answer, turn your home into a Faraday cage.
Explain. Explain.
So, I'm not kidding.
I understand, but explain what that means.
Take your roof off. Get a metal roof or put aluminum foil or aluminum mesh screening under the shingles. Take the siding off your house. Put 2 layers of aluminum screening and ground it, and turn your house into a Faraday cage. I, in fact, have done that with my home. Okay. It works very well.
So
In
long
my-
as you don't get any signals that get in there and then
Well,
they're going all over the
I don't
place.
have 5G in front of my house, but from my living room, I see no other neighbor's Wi-Fi. None.
Okay, but for those who are not able to do this.
Yeah, that's
all
right. There
Then I
isn't
think,
a
and
lot of
which is the
protection.
majority of people, seriously, what are the best steps they can take? What are the most practical steps for the harried parent of 5 children and is homeschooling them and wants to protect them, what do they do?
You go through the process of installing Y-Shield paint on all your interior walls.
Which means what? Y-Shield paint
It's
is?
a black carbon paint. It's ugly, and then you have to cover it with your regular paint color. And so it's a very disruptive
There's
process.
some shielding paints that aren't ugly, but they're quite expensive. They do
They're all
exist.
expensive. All these solutions are expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Can,
Yes.
can I say that what we need to do is get organized and educate everyone you know, because as great as this is, it's not
It's not
a
affordable.
solution for most people.
All right.
It's not affordable, no.
All right. So do opt-out meters still collect data? And what type of data do they collect? How does it send, and what happens to it?
Opt-out meters can collect data, but the data is not retrieved.
How would it be transferred?
They would have to connect to the front of the meter with a special device, with a special connector, and download the memory content. But they're not doing that.
They're
so.
not doing that, okay. To attenuate microwaves from smart meters, can screens made of metal reduce exposure?
Only to a point.
Sorry?
Only to a point. There have been, and I have measured, the 900 megahertz frequency and the 2.4 gigahertz frequency on the power line wires in the home.
Right,
I have measured that.
On
Here's where
power
it gets worse,
yeah.
okay? I've measured 2 homes here in Michigan where the entire yard is radiating.
Equally throughout the yard?
The entire yard for hundreds of feet. I was stunned. It's a real case where, you know, I could walk out there with my radio frequency meter, and I could walk from one end of the yard to the other end of the yard and pick up a very strong RF signal, even though there's no reason for it. The reason is because the neutral line and the ground are in close proximity to the antenna of the smart meter, and if conditions are just right, and the impedance is just exactly right, they can turn your ground wiring into an antenna. And the whole house is now radiating. Every single room in the home is radiating.
Why can you not ground a wireless smart meter?
Why can you not ground a wireless smart meter? Well,
Yes, you said that wireless smart meters cannot be grounded and that.
No, they cannot be grounded.
Right, why, so it's not physically, it's not possible?
Nope.
Okay, all right. Okay, back to other questions. What can cities do now, besides join the lawsuit, to protect their citizens? And what are you doing now on a local level? We haven't heard from you yet, sorry.
What we did in our township of Northfield is we passed a couple resolutions at the township board, and that helped to educate some people in the community, of course, educate the board of trustees, and that's helped quite a bit. You know, I think the best thing to do is to get that information out there to people. There's a lot of people that aren't aware of the risks, the privacy concerns, potentially the health concerns, and we're talking not only your township officials and your city and township, but we're talking schools also. Just start slowly to educate people. Get a few friends, like was mentioned earlier at the panel. Get some educated people together, get some concise information, just start sharing it. Get the word out, get the notifications out to people, and repetitive message does help. It has an impact, and you can help make changes. You just have to have the confidence and the education and get some friends together and do it.
Tell us a little bit about the process that you engaged in specifically to get to this point.
You mean
What
to get
started you
here?
on? What started you on that effort?
In the township?
Yes.
I would say just being aware of, actually them wanting to deploy smart meters. So the first resolution we did was in support of 4220, the House bill for meter choice. And that's kind of where I began with that, and I met people, and with the development of the 5G, which of course came more recently here, just kind of continued with the same kind of effort and education and outreach and trying to get more attention towards these subjects so people are aware that there's something we need to be concerned about here.
Is there anything Cece
Yeah.
wants to say about other states and what's happening in Massachusetts in particular?
Sure. After Ashland Public Schools became the first in the nation to have this little sign hanging in our classroom, I realized after a while that it's just a sign. They're still waiting for higher authorities to advise them what to do, but when they read that legal fine print, they tried to cover their legal backside, I think. So Senator Karen Spilka was gracious to introduce a bill, and it would bring the right bright minds together at the state level. And in most states, if you have a reasonable request, your senator is likely obliged to introduce a bill on your behalf, so don't be shy about bringing this issue up. And again, don't go it alone. Educate those around you and go in as a group, and you'll have better leverage that way. Massachusetts is now leading the nation with 9 bills that address man-made radio frequency. We have 2 that were before the Education Committee to protect our children and our staff in our schools. The Education Committee heard testimony on that, and I have a big debt of gratitude to many in this room, to many of our experts from around the world who have sent in testimony for the bills from states all over the U.S. and internationally. So whenever there's an opportunity to lend your support, write your story and have it ready to go, and then when somebody asks for your help, you just pop it into their format and ship it off. Just write it once. It'll make your life a lot easier. So we had 2 bills for education. They have both failed to progress. The Education Committee did release them to public health, but they have not progressed further there. My bill, thankfully, with Senator Karen Spilka, is still alive. It's with the Senate Committee on Rules right now. And then Senator Julian Sear introduced 2 bills that would mimic the Berkeley ordinance to give people the right to know, raise that fine print, and protect children from handheld devices. When the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection got those 2 bills assigned to them, they listened to all the testimony that was coming in. So using your voice is critically important. Don't leave this for somebody else to do. And then they assigned a research analyst who did the deep dive and figured out what this issue really is. And then the Committee on Consumer Protection actually wrote their own bill and released it in April, and it's now with the Senate Committee on Ways and Means. So political change is a marathon, not a sprint, but as Dr. Cindy Russell says, take the hamburger approach. Educate people at the top, educate people in the middle, and somewhere we'll meet or at the grassroots, and somewhere we'll meet in the middle. So we're very pleased with Massachusetts' efforts, but I have learned, don't wait. Don't stop there. And we have also educated the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and we've educated the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, which has written 4 fact sheets, 1 for cell towers, 1 for cell phones, 1 for Wi-Fi, and 1 for high voltage power lines, which are extremely low frequencies, but very hazardous as well. So don't think somebody else knows about this, because conversation by conversation, they've been deer in the headlights. And it really does take sitting down and having a one-on-one conversation. Sending an email is not enough, because they get thousands of emails in a week. If you send an email, pick up the phone and call, and you have a right as a citizen to expect they're going to speak with you. And actually, it's been kind of nice. When people call in to our legislators, they're very courteous. They're very grateful that people are speaking up, because otherwise, how would they possibly know this issue exists?
And with all due respect, I want to add one thing. As a scientist, please don't call for more research. Don't call for yet another commission. I understand that's the bulk of some of the bills. People love to see studies done. I love to do studies. That's how I support my students and my young faculty. But we don't need any more studies. The whole purpose of what we presented here is that there's a lot of substantial scientific evidence, and we have to recognize that it's a lot easier to study a problem than it is to do something about it. And with that in mind, I'd like to take this moment to introduce Theodora Scarato, and we'll move right into the last session on practical safeguards.